Welcome to Paths That Cross. I am your host, Marilyn Banks, holistic life coach and spiritual counselor for body, mind, and spirit unity. Well, is anybody out there currently feeling stressed? Tough times in so many different ways for a lot of folks. But there are ways around it, ways to cope with it, to handle it, to manage it, even when it's at its worst for any of us. The old saying, different strokes for different folks, fits with stress. We're all different. We all have our own ways of how it works on us. And it's hard on the mind, the body, and the spirit. Depression, resentment, aggression, complacency, worry, with no sense of relief, no real escape. It's always there, torturing the mind, and the mind lashes out at the body, and the body in turn represses the spirit, altering our frame of mind and affecting everyone around us in all of our relationships, whether it be home, family, work, friends, even our pets. But most especially, it affects our relationship with ourself. And we generally end up sitting on our all too familiar pity pot. Oh, poor me, poor me. And all the while, we blame others, so we don't have to look very closely at ourselves. Look at our own decisions and choices that we've made to create this stressful, unhappy condition we're having to deal with or not deal with. Or hold ourselves accountable for our own state of misery. Sometimes there is comfort in our discomfort, and we gravitate to what we know. We hold on to what we believe to be true. And it's easier to stay in that spot than it is to reach blindly into that black void of the unknown that change will catapult us into who knows what or where. And it may be worse than what we're experiencing now. We may not be able to handle it, maintain control. And one of our worst fears is loss of control. And that's an even scarier place. I know what I speaketh here. I know the beast. And I know those crazed feelings that accompany it. There was a time in my own life when everything was a mess all around me. And my life had escalated to such a fast pace, I couldn't keep up with it. Couldn't take care of anything. No sense of order, no matter what area I looked into. My house was a mess, the kids were off and running, as was my, at that time, husband. Business was a calamity. But the biggest mess of all was me. I had 5 kids, and at that time the oldest was smack in her terrible teens, and the youngest was stuck in her terrible 2s, both of them throwing tantrums, defying any and all set boundaries, most especially when told no. And all the while, the other 3 were caught somewhere twixt and tween the 2 acting out rebels. And then there was the husband, who wanted the good life, but wasn't willing to work the program, at it, for it, or with it. And then there was me. I owned and operated a particularly popular retail establishment with multiple locations that only gave multiple problems. And trying to maintain during those ever-so-sweet years with interest rates climbing 18% and above, and a recession that held a critical eye towards any non-essential spending. And what had once been a fairly lucrative business was screeching to a halt, and problems were plenty. Money was scarce. Their money, my money, which only meant no money. Never quite enough of anything to go around. Of me, for me, and nothing going right. Whatever the meaning of going right was, no matter what I did, when I did it, or just how it was done, it was never right. Oh, yes. I remember the green-eyed monsters of fear and anxiety constantly churning over in my belly. Those fitful, sleepless nights, paralyzed in sheer panic. Consuming worries of overheads, of making payroll, of employee problems, of customer service problems. The worry. Oh yeah, there was that dream where I was running, being chased down a dark alley in the chilled blackness of night, with no way out. Running, too scared to peek back over my shoulder to see who was chasing me. And whatever it was not good, I knew that, until I finally ran out of alley and was trapped by a dark brick wall and no escape, and there was nothing left to do but fight. And I can remember gathering all of my courage just to turn around and face this predator who was so close that I could feel the hot breath on the back of my neck. And I can remember jerking wide awake and cold terror penetrating into every inch of my body as I recognized the evildoer. And it was 3 giant bold letters looming down over the top of me that said IRS. Oh, what a nightmare. But anyway, the dream was so symbolic. Always the running, no matter where I was or what I was doing or where I was going, always the running. Never enough time, never enough of anything. The bleak, black time with no real escape. Then there was that day, one of those coinkydink days that when you look back on it, it just kind of stands so much taller than the rest. Anyway, as I remembered, it was probably at the worst of those times when I felt as though I'd been put through a meat grinder, and probably looked like it too. And a friend of a friend stopped in just to say hi and just gab a little bit. And she quite casually asked me how things were going. Well, I can tell you this, it was the wrong question at the wrong time, and out of nowhere, a dam broke within me and I burst into tears right in front of her. And I was so embarrassed because I really didn't know her that well. And I still remember the shock on her face as she groped around her purse for something to soak up all the sopping emotion. And finally, when I got myself pulled together and we chatted a bit about all that was going on, she rather quietly asked if I had ever meditated. And if I didn't, well, she thought maybe it could help me. Wouldn't help any of the lousy situations, perhaps, but she thought it could definitely help how I was, or I should say wasn't, coping with them. Well, that was a new one. Stopped me cold. Meditation. Wasn't that some kind of ritual that various religious monks participated in? Well, now, I'm talking about way back in the early 80s, when, believe me when I say, there definitely was not the resources on subjects at our fingertips, or even available, that there are now, let alone the acceptance of such practices. Lots of taboos back then. Hell and the devil's work and all that stuff. And now, so thankful for divine intervention. It's all so mainstream now, and in one way or another is in all of our lives. We've come a long way, baby. But at that time, it most definitely wasn't. And she triggered something deep inside of me that felt so right. She told me she meditated at least a half hour every morning and had done so for years, and that it always started her day out on the right foot for her. And as she spoke, I couldn't help but notice that she had always seemed so calm when I'd been around her, that reflected a sense of peace and serenity, a genuine softness about her, around her whole body, and especially on her lovely elder face, which was lineless. And I asked her, well, how did she do this? What was it actually? And she told me. And so I, too, started right then to make a priority to find the time to begin working at quieting myself by getting comfortable, by relaxing my mind. Initially, I used soft, soothing music in the background, music that I liked, music that I could escape with, focused on my breathing, and with practice, I eventually learned that I could literally stop the habitual nagging mind chatter by simply ignoring it. And I breathed myself into an incredible zone of pure quiet. But the thing I remember best about those early days was how calm I instantly felt, even after my very first session, giving myself a complete rest. And within a matter of days, I was aware of how my internal pace had slowed down, which also slowed me down on the outside too. The obnoxious mind chatter was quieter. That in itself was a pure miracle to me. I was literally able to let go of my problems, even if it was only for an hour, but it was an hour of peace. I immediately found for myself that state of calm, serenity, and contentedness that she wore so well. And at that moment, I knew what Christ meant when he said, "Come unto me, and I shall give ye rest." You know, it's always been written, and it's always been accepted that he spent days in meditation. And in too many ways to count, my life turned around. As I quieted myself, my outer life quieted too, everywhere. At work, with my employees, at home, with my family. My sense of peace and contentment reverberated in all areas of my life. It was the beginning of the new way of life for me, and one that I not only yet practice after all these years, but I so enjoy teaching others how to relax and let go of stresses that are getting them down, stresses that have them clutched in a death hold, pinned to the ground, and ready to scream uncle for whatever their reason. I would have to say that stress is behind the majority of the calls that I receive. All kinds of relationships, stressful life, work, family life, health, money, and there's always that restless state of affairs that our country's in right now that's looming around us, with the conditions of our present economy issues breeding all kinds of doubts, dark unknowns, fears of the future for a lot of people, and which very subtly trickles into our own state of livelihoods, mentally, physically, and emotionally, and spiritually. Very depressing out there, and pushing the fear and stress buttons buried deep within ourselves. At some time we reach a point, one way or another, we have to stop, and we are forced into making changes, whether it be for the positive or the negative. Changes have to be made as we reach a crossroad. There is no question that stress paralyzes the mind, the body, and the spirit, and when it is severe enough and persisting for a long enough time, it can be a killer. Our mental states of fear, worry, guilt, resentment, shame, and self-hatred are all triggered under stressful conditions, and each has the power to single-handedly program our physical body to shut down, cell by cell, until it eventually, literally breaks down. Oh yes, it may take years, but I'll tell you, once we've hit the start button, it's a go. And it's not until we recognize it for what it is and able to disengage it by examining ourselves, by looking at ourselves, that we can disengage it. But the damage is in the works and only a matter of time. And then we have to heal the self. We are all healers. We are all given the power, the ability to heal ourselves. From hives to heart disease, from the common colds to cancer, from aches to acute asthma. We run the gambit, and every illness has a cause and a purpose, and is created by the ever-looming power behind each and every one of our thoughts, and our attitudes, and our perceptions. And all of these illnesses and dis-ease is a definite warning sign that our negative thinking is in dire straits, screaming at us that something in our psyche is amiss, which is only revealing the state of mind that our spirit is in. And fortunately or unfortunately, sometimes pain is the only thing that will get our attention. So, let me ask you, when you find yourself being consumed by stressful conditions, in whatever situations you've found yourself in, the first question has to be, what are you doing for you? What are you doing to give yourself a break from the pressure, from the fear, from the panic? To give yourself a break from the habitual, abusive self-mind chatter that's always pushing, nagging. What are you doing to stop all of this? What are you doing to give yourself relief from all of this stress? Well, I have a way. The first thing that has to be done is to stop, literally. Give the mind a break. Give you a break so you can give the physical a break. And most importantly, stop focusing on the problem by stilling that mind, stopping the mind. Stop the doing, the running by stilling the physical. Stop and breathe deep, literally. Because when you're stressed, every muscle in your body is knotted up from energy, blocked energy. And your breathing is very, very shallow. That if it wasn't automatic, you would forget to breathe at all. So right now, try it. Take in a long, deep breath. Breathe in and out. Breathe in and out. And notice how the tenseness is leaving, even if it's only for a moment until your mind chatter kicks back in again. But it can be done. Ever so easily, relief can be received. And another question is, and a very important question, are you really ready for change? Are you really wanting it? Or is there some psychologically twisted need to keep it, to hold on to it? You have to admit, even if it doesn't feel good, you are feeling something. Maybe there is even a hidden need to be punished, or perhaps a deep belief that you don't deserve happiness or success, or maybe you aren't good enough or smart enough. Sounds ludicrous, doesn't it? But I tell you, these stressful conditions perpetuate that inner chatter that's only validating those negative untruths about yourself? So do you really want to let go of the struggle? And if you could, would they soon be replaced with yet another set of circumstances of anxieties to worry about, to fixate on once again? Well, here's the dope. What you focus on, what you place your attention on, what you dwell on, is what you will pull to you. Sounds like a catch-22, doesn't it? Well, it's not. What goes on the inside is merely reflected on the outside. Your inner world is the real world, and your outer world is merely a house of mirrors that is reflecting the status quo. Beginning with your relationship with yourself, your attitudes, your perceptions, your conscious and unconscious beliefs, because what you believe is what is. And through your choices and your decisions, you create the conditions and circumstances in your life. Even the choice to stop the addictive mind chatter. But everything going on inside of you is reflected in your outer world, and you pull to you the people and the circumstances and the situations that reveal exactly what it is, how you feel about you, how you feel about life, whether it's positive or negative. It's as simple as that. And it's through the break that you give yourself by letting go, even for a few minutes of stillness, that we are able to recharge, that we are able to get away from the problem, that we are able to come back fresh with a new outlook, even possibly with new answers, or physically return in a calmer state, at a slower pace, less scattered, more focused, procrastinating less, and more action-oriented and able to achieve goals in a timely fashion, and perhaps feeling refreshed enough that you are able to put away the stress long enough to laugh a little more, to enjoy the people around you, to take stock in your path long enough to smell the flowers and become thankful for the good stuff in your life. The Spirit will thank you. Now we need to understand exactly what the habitual mind chatter is all about, what it is, and the role that it plays regarding our ability to cope with stress. It is the left brain that is responsible for the addictive and habitual mind chatter that we hear repeated over and over, that inner critic that runs off at the mouth like a runaway train, especially in these times of stress, when we are the most vulnerable and the messages are the most damning, detrimentally critical. It's a self-bashing, actually. I have a story for you, and it's a true story. It actually happened. One day, as I was trying to explain how these pre-recorded tapes of badgering, abusive messages play over and over in our head throughout our lives, with all the judging and the incriminating, shameful, guilt-ridden, demeaning ridicule, and things that we would never say to anyone we loved, but feel obliged to tell ourselves over and over again. I always knew what it was, but I never had a name for it. Well, on this one day, I was with a client and was pointing out all of these raw dynamics that the hateful self-talk had, not just in our psyche, but everything around us that it affected. And a short distance away, a very determined and angry young voice got our attention. As it headed toward us, got louder and louder, and it turned out to be two young boys, obviously brothers, and probably around the 7 and 5 age range. The older one in the lead, and the noisy younger one tagging just a step right behind him, and he was incessantly hounding and nagging and harping away at the older boy. And there was no question he was upset about something that his big bro did or did not do to suit him. And totally oblivious then to our presence, the oldest boy suddenly halted and wheeled around and yelled with great might, "Shut up, you brat!" And there was no question he had heard enough. And the stunned little guy shut up. And then the two of them continued on their way, with the bigger boy still in the lead and the smaller boy following close behind, but strangely silent. At that moment, instantly, I not only had the name for that critical self-judge residing inside of our head, but also how to stop the constant demeaning banter. Tell that harping, nagging, hounding, undisciplined brat to shut up, and it will work if we mean what we say. I cite the brat to illustrate just how the rational mind will intentionally interfere in our lives, and most especially when we are attempting to relax in meditation. You'll find it. Our head suddenly fills with chatter, whether it is from sheer habit of the constant white noise running through our mind, or it could be out of fear. We fear anything new or different, especially if on an interior level change is in the works, and most especially if the change is not our idea. Knowing exactly what and how to get our attention, a kaleidoscope of thoughts will flash at us, reminding us of things we forgot to do, or need to do, or should be doing, reprimanding us for wasting our time in doing this. And, if desperate enough, it will instigate fears, the boogeyman and demons taking over us. Oh yes, the brat knows us well, knows just what makes us tick. The resistance list is endless. It'll use anything it can think of to stay in control. It's all a diversion to keep us from shutting down the habitually constant thinking. The brat is merely a built-in resistance. I speak of the brat often. Being undisciplined, it is not used to taking orders from us. And as we learn to ignore it, the resistance gives way. The answer is persistence. Stick to it. And as we begin to learn about our unique self, we change. And when we change, our choices begin to change, and our options, as do our judgments. And as our judgments change, our situations change. Situations that we do not buy into, the need for stress. We change in ourselves. We become intimate in our relationship with ourselves. And we become able to allow an intimacy we never knew before in the relationships around us. We always bring people to us with the same set of values that we have for ourselves. So as we grow and make wise choices and decisions, our realities change too, along with our future and our path. So, it's going to be good. Very, very good. Because we are very, very interesting people with lots and lots programmed into our psyche that will either make us or break us. In the meantime, remember, slow down, take a deep breath, and reflect on the good that's all around you. Peace be with thee, O beautiful ones. Life is good. And so it is.